Welcome back to another very special episode of the Harlequins podcast. 2 and 4 quarters. Again, I'm joined by my cousin Will, but this week we are very, very lucky to be joined by England and Harlequins legends, Rachael Burford. Welcome to the pod. How are you?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. I'm glad I got the call up to finally come on the pod. What episode are you on now? I can't believe I've not been on before.
I know, we did say actually, a few weeks ago, we had like a list of drawn up names and, you know, this is the top of the tier guests and whoever we want on, your name was definitely up there. So I think what we're now, 13, 14, something like that?
Yeah, about that, yeah.
But no, it's going well. It's going well, and obviously, like I would say, unbelievably lucky to have you on. First things, how's the injury tracking? Obviously, little knock a few weeks ago, getting back to sort of full fitness nearly.
Yeah, no, I'm back. Had a really good turnaround with it. I had quite a big tear in my calf, and but managed to kind of really annoy my physio, really. That every time she put something in front of me, I kept overcoming it, and she couldn't quite get her head around it. But no, I'm in a really good place. Just need to get back playing so that I don't have to do these horrible non-match day runs anymore. They're disgusting.
Probably desperate to get off the scaffolding at Surrey Sports Park and be out there playing instead.
Yes, definitely. Especially how windy it is up there, Jesus.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously there's no club games for the foreseeable whilst we've got the women's Six Nations going on. And that's kind of how this call came about, actually. We reached out to you on Twitter for a few tips in our fantasy team. We got a tight-lipped response. How's that going for you? How did round one go?
Yeah, I went pretty good actually in about the 15 leagues that I'm in. I felt bad not saying yes to everybody who asked me to be in one. But yeah, no, I went well in round one, thanks to Jess Breach. Backed her to be captain, and she delivered. So
I can't believe whoever's got her in the team and hasn't got her as captain has got no clue.
Well, if you pick Poppy Cleal though.
Yeah, she get 100 something plus points.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that, actually, because so our team did okay. We did actually have a look. I think you're a little bit ahead of us. But we picked the wrong French winger. We should have gone for Boulard. Got the hat trick. Imagine if you'd captained her as well. I think you'd be streets ahead by now. So, but it's a long game, isn't it? If there's anything I've learned from the fantasy game in the men's Six Nations, that it changes week on week. So we'll be back.
But it's great though, isn't it? Like how many people are talking about the game because of that?
100%.
And actually thinking about, what's that player like? And I think it's brilliant. I think it's such a good tool to grow the game.
I did absolutely terribly in the men's ones. I'm hoping the women I can do a little bit better in the women's one.
It's hard, isn't it? It's hard because on paper you think you've got a good team, but it just depends. Yeah, it's classic fantasy.
I kept forgetting to do it each week on the men's one, and it was Sarah Beckett that set it up for us as the Quins group, and she didn't remind me, so I came out pretty bad in the first few weeks, and I was like, well, there's no point even playing that. You can't even catch people up if you've messed up on the first few rounds. Then it's a nightmare.
We'll go on to our first agenda point, which is actually you, so it should be a nice easy one. World Cup winner, been to 4 World Cups and a further 2 Sevens World Cups. Grand Slam winner, and fingers crossed, hopefully this year an Allianz Premier 15s winner as well. What have been the most significant moments in your career journey so far? What have been the highest highs and the lowest lows?
Good question. I think I have a number of highs. My first cap winning that in 2006. All the way up to 2014 winning the World Cup. But also a really important moment of my career was playing alongside my mum and sister. When I was 16, they kind of said, look, you need to move to a Premiership club if you want to play for England. But that was going to be my only year that I would have been able to play alongside them. So I made the decision to stay and play at Medway Rugby Club for a year. It was just such good fun. Lots of highs. And look, there's loads more. Talk about the Sevens. That was incredible. Playing in Hong Kong, beating Australia in the final was amazing. And again, on the same foot, there's been lots of lows as well. So been lots of injuries, disappointment, not selected, dropped out the squad, those kind of things, losses, losing in finals with Harlequins. They've been really tough times. There's been a real mixed bag of it all, really.
I mean, talking of injuries, obviously, not on the pitch at the minute, and we found out a few weeks ago that the Women's World Cup's going to be postponed until next year in New Zealand. Does that give you something to look forward to? Is that sort of that burning torch at the end of the tunnel? Get yourself fit, get yourself in the squad. 5 World Cups. Not many people can put their name to that.
Well, look, I think the amount of young talent that England have got at the moment is unbelievable. You know, you can never say never, but it's definitely something that I'm not chasing. We're probably more likely to be there as a big fan than anything else.
As Mike says, 5 World Cups would be absolutely ridiculous. And I think it's well documented that you like to take things with one game at a time, or cross each bridge as you come to it. So, but you're a bit of a legend off the pitch, but also a pioneer off it. Girls Rugby Club, which is obviously a global community that you've set up. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so Girls Rugby Club is all about creating opportunities for young girls into the game and helping with some of those barriers that are out there, to enable them to just have opportunities to train more, play more, see more role models. You know, we did things over lockdown, like lockdown squads, where we got, you know, likes of Shauna Brown just talking to these girls about why confidence is important and how to be more confident. And so, yeah, it's this global platform. It's really kicked off in the UK, but we are trying to get more a global approach about it. The next 2 weeks, Easter, and with restrictions coming up for sport, we've got a jammed couple of weeks with all our camps. Tomorrow we're kicking off in Cobham, sold out. Got Rocky Clark joining us, and we've got that for the next 2 weeks. It's going to be an exhausting 2 weeks, but literally can't wait to see the young girls back out there training and playing it and doing what they love.
It's like talking about sort of empowering girls is really cool for me, because obviously as a teacher, I've got loads of year 7s, year 8s, year 9s, and it's been really difficult this year so we can't mix bubbles, and we can't mix year groups, and we can't mix this and that. And some of the girls are absolutely pestering me to, I want to play with the boys in the football, I want to play with the boys. And towards that, sort of after Christmas, and since we've been back, we've been able to sort of mix it a little bit. And they get so stuck in. There's about 3 or 4 of them that absolutely love it. And some of the boys are sort of, you know, thinking, oh my God, these girls are so much better than us. And I think giving them something to look forward to, and obviously in Zoom, it's really difficult to have that community thing. Obviously, you talk about playing with your mum and playing with your sister. Is sort of that community feel of rugby something that's really important to what you do with Rugby Club?
Oh, 100%. I think, you know, we're the 3 of us, we're all big rugby fans. We've grown up in it and we've loved it. But I think what rugby is so unique is the fact that when you don't feel like you fit in somewhere, or where, you know, you feel a bit lost, or you're different from people, then actually probably rugby is the right place for you, and that community for you to come and be exactly who you want to be. You know, whenever you're on a rugby pitch or training, you look around you, there's nobody who's like you. And that's what's so incredible about it, is that this complete mix of people, backgrounds, sizes, shapes, you know, abilities, can work together and create something really, really good. So yeah, I think it's hugely important that we remind people that, you know, it's bigger than just a game. It's an identity of who you are. And I don't think there's another sport out there that does that other than rugby. The
next question I had was, we saw a piece that you did, I can't remember where it was, but you were talking about, you were doing like a coaching session with some girls, and you mentioned, you know, an Emily Scarrett or a Maggie Alfonsi, and they sort of looked back at you with a bit of a blank face. And I think I was actually thinking about this the other day, in terms of growing the success of not just women's rugby, but the women's sport in general. Obviously, in 2017, England won the Cricket World Cup. Someone like Sarah Taylor's now a full-time men's coach down at Sussex. Great Britain women won the hockey in 2016. You know, that's so, you know, important in terms of those real cliche terms of growing the game. Are you aware of the sort of parameters around having a successful elite women's side that is one of the biggest driving forces behind getting more girls playing?
Yeah, I mean, it's hugely important. And I don't think you necessarily need to win to drive new people into the game or to inspire people. People just need to know about it and need to see it. And, you know, things like the Olympics, it's easy to access. So, you know, you get young girls, young boys looking at it going, oh, I want to do that. I want to try that out. I mean, I don't know what you two are like when the Olympics is on, but I get behind things that I would never normally get behind. It's bizarre, but it's just that accessibility. It's being able to see it and believe it and think, you know, oh, if they've done it, I could do it. And I remember like those comments you said about when I said someone like Emily Scarrett or Maggie Alfonsi, you know, 2 massive names, like any person who's in rugby really would know who they are. And we were demonstrating something, and sometimes you have to reiterate the importance of doing some basic stuff, because actually come crunch time, it's really difficult to do. And I was kind of selling Maggie out, really saying, Maggie can't even do a 2-on-1 because she loves being, scoring the tries and taking it on herself. So
contact,
yeah, exactly. And then so I use that as a reference, and they're just kind of looking at me, and then I'm like, do you know who Maggie is? They're like, no. And I'm like, okay, do you know who Emily Scarrett is? They're like, no. And we've moved on. This was a few years ago, but it just highlighted to me that we don't have them in the face of young girls enough. Things like when COVID's not happening, how often did you make sure all the Women's Six Nations games are on in your rugby club, so that when girls go in there, they see it, and when boys go in there, they see it, and it becomes normal. So then the next generation of people that are growing up, young boys, young girls, coaches, any bar staff, anybody who's in the game grows up seeing women, knowing that women are in the game, coaching at whatever level and refereeing. So then actually it becomes normal, and it's not like we've got a girl playing in the team. It's seen as normal. So you've got a long way to go, but yeah, I think it's really important to just have that visibility.
Yeah, 100%. Visibility is the key word, isn't it? And I think coverage providers are actually getting pretty good at that. I mean, for the men's Six Nations, Maggie was all over that as well. And I've seen Emily Scarrett doing some BT work, particularly down at Quins, actually. So it's good to see that there is more female representation in terms of punditry. But on that subject of visibility, you're obviously doing pretty much everything at the minute. You've got a huge media career going on with the Women's Six Nations. You're still playing. You've got the Girls Rugby Club going on. You're also head of women's rugby for the International Rugby Players Association. What does that entail, and how much of that role is tied into what we were just talking about there about visibility, or is it more sort of player focused?
So the new role is more kind of very elite end. So it's looking after kind of the professional players around the world, which we don't have a lot of, but that doesn't mean that we're only representing them. It's kind of that we're that, I guess, essentially like a middle person between World Rugby and between players and player associations. So we work really closely with individual player associations to, either challenge certain things that are happening and to take solutions to World Rugby, or the other way around to seek feedback and thoughts on where the game might want to go. Let's use the global calendar as a good example. That was launched a couple of weeks ago. Well, we've been in correspondence with them, coming back nearly 2 years now, and we've been liaising with players. So, that's one side of it. But then, there's a side to it where we've got to help grow that game and grow the commercialization of the game, which will be a huge part in kind of bringing all stakeholders together and trying to solve some of the areas that have existed within the game. But yeah, work closely with World Rugby, work closely with player associations, because we've all got the same goal in mind. And it's just about how we can work together to make that happen a bit quicker.
I know you talk about sort of those characters in the game, and you mentioned the likes of Shauna Brown, what a character she is. And obviously, being involved with the Quins, I remember watching, I think it was during lockdown, they did the DHL Moments to Deliver. It was Sarah Beckett, Jess, and Shauna Brown watching the Leinster game from Twickenham big game at the Stoop a few years ago. Who are the girls that are in the Quinn setup at the minute that you look at and think, in a few years we're going to have a sort of a big profile, big media coverage? They love a little bit of the spotlight.
Oh, well, Shauna Brown, she loves anything that concerns her, whether there's a mic or a camera. She finds it. Like, literally, I don't know if you look at all of her pictures from games, it's always her, like she's literally posing at them, or she knows the angle that they're looking at.
Yeah.
So she's definitely one that's like sourcing out and loves the opportunity. And I think it's just made her grow as a person, doing all that stuff. It's incredible the strides that she's taken.
She actually did co-coms the other day, didn't she, for a London Irish game? Yeah,
and she was really good as well. And I think it's just, there's loads of girls in that space. Like Jess loves TikTok and is all over that side.
We had a big discussion about TikTok.
Oh yeah.
Well, like I keep saying, all the girls at school are always on TikTok. So as a professional teacher, I've got to stay in the loop and make sure I don't miss out on the chat. And then obviously, because I was mates with Izzy at uni, I saw a lot of TikTok content over lockdown, and obviously saw some of the Quinn stuff they're doing on TikTok, and I just find some of it so funny. I can never do it myself. I haven't got the dance moves, but I absolutely love it.
Somebody asked me the other day, they were like, what way can you get young girls engaged in PE? And I was like, why don't you do TikToks with them in lessons?
Yeah.
It's the same as doing dance. You're making them work together. You're building leadership, all of this. And they're like, oh yeah, that could work. I mean, I don't actually know how TikTok works. So I'm just throwing an idea out there. Like, I have no idea what the consequences are, but yeah, just like Jess loves it. And yeah, we were meant to actually do a duo right back at the start of lockdown, and she sent me the video. She's like, and every week she was like, have you learnt it yet? Have you learnt it yet? No, I literally didn't have time. She's like, well, how are we going to do this? I'm like, oh, and I bottled it. So
quite tough with a torn calf as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, so good.
Oh, that's good. Like that bit of innovation in terms of PE teaching. I can get on board with that.
You can have that one for free.
Yeah, I'll go back to the PE teachers at school and say, look, girls rugby this week. Rachael Burford has said we must do TikTok.
Watch your buy-in. Watch the girls buy into it.
Yeah,
honestly, we did it. We had a PE lesson, and obviously we were strict a minute on what we can do in terms of like facilities and this and that. And we bring the speaker down to our games fields, and I just put a few songs on to sort of like lighten the mood, especially when it's freezing cold. And somebody goes, "Oh, so I heard this song on TikTok," and so their energy just goes up. I'm thinking, "Oh my god, I'm so behind it. I'm 24 and I'm feeling old around these."
Like, yeah, I know.
I know this one. I know this one.
Love that. We've got one more question before we go into quickfire, and we've touched on the subject already, but obviously we've got Seoul Women's Six Nations this year, which I think is great. I'll be speaking candidly; it's the most excited I've been about a Women's Six Nations, being able to watch every game without any clashes, but also the fact that it's got a fantasy Six Nations league. I think it's great that gamifying it almost opens it up to a wider audience as well. But then also, I think the biggest thing I've learned just from round one is it deepens your knowledge of who the players are and the teams, etc., which I think is massive for, it's that cliche again of growing the game, but also people's education and understanding of the game as well, whether you're male or female. I think that's irrelevant. I think it's good to be able to understand who's out there on the field. What's your take on this year's tournament? Obviously, it's a slightly different structure. It's no round robin. The timings are slightly different. A little bit more coverage, I think. What's your take on all of that?
Yeah, well, I think it's really exciting that we're doing it in our own window, so we're not being overshadowed by the men. Look, I'm a massive rugby fan. I love men's rugby and women's rugby, but there's no way I can watch all that rugby in one weekend. So something has to give. And normally, not for me, because I'd watch the women over the men, but in normal setting, what's going to give? The one that's easy to find and watch, or the one that's really hard? So like we've always been on the back burner with that. So I think being in its own window is brilliant. Round robin and the two pools, completely get it for this year with COVID. Don't want it to stay, want everybody to play everybody. The only thing that I would like to have is maybe everyone plays everyone, and then you do have a finals weekend.
Yeah.
So then it's like, yeah, all right, you might have beaten them this time round, but can you do it in under pressure in a final playoff? So yeah, I think it's really good. No clashing of time, like you said, gives everybody an opportunity to watch the games and get behind them. The Fantasy League, I think, is such a good tool. I genuinely think it's such a good way to engage fans. That's a big area that we haven't really been able to do, is it really engage with fans. And like you said, Will, about getting, people understanding who players are, the names of them in other countries, not just in your own country.
Yeah.
You would know all the players in England. But let's look at last year. If in France, the winger scores 3 tries, would you have known about it? Would you have thought, oh my God, I should have picked her, I should have had it? You wouldn't even think about it.
Exactly,
so I think that education and that engagement, and then instead of it just being like game's over, no one talks about it until the next game, actually now everyone is talking about it straight after the game. They're looking at who they got, what happened.
Who we going to pick?
Yeah, looking at the stats now, because they'll have stats to the players. So all of a sudden you get not only on the day all the engagement, but then suddenly all the way through the week you're getting talk about it, banter about leagues, who's come last, like Sarah Beckett was doing the worst droppers and the highest risers in our league. So it's just generating more interest in it, which naturally then will have, people are going to want to watch the games because they want to know how the fantasy league goes. Well, if you're as competitive as I am, you do. So then that naturally is going to have more people watching all the games, not just, I'm going to watch England because I'm an English fan. Actually, I've got 7 girls in my fantasy league who are playing France Wales tonight. I need to watch that game because I want to see how that goes. So that naturally then builds more people watching the game, which then obviously raises the profile of viewing figures. Then suddenly you get broadcasters looking in, oh, they have got a market. then sponsors. So I think it's not going to solve all the problems that we have in the game, but it's definitely a great tool to raise the profile and the engagement.
I'll hold my hands up and say that when we first said, right, we're going to do a team, I was like, look, we've got to get as many Quins players in as we possibly can. We'll get Beth Dainton on the flank from Wales.
Yeah.
And then obviously you can only pick a certain amount. I actually miss the game on Saturday. I had to watch it when I got home. And I remember texting I was like, yes,
I'm going.
Yeah. But
I watched it.
I watched it when I got home. I texted Will. I was like, yes, I'll breach the score. And I was like, yes, like Leanne Riley scored. And Will was like, we haven't got Leanne Riley in our team. I was like, no, we what are we doing?
No, because you can only have 5. You can only have 5 from each country.
Only have 5. And then
I was watching the game with Katie Daly-McLean because she was with Guinness doing pitch side and I was with O2. And I was like, go on, Jess, go on. And she's like, you only want her to score because she's in your fancy league.
100%.
And I was 100%. Like, yeah, honestly. And then, because Katie's not playing, I'm like, what are you doing? Why would you not play?
Yeah.
And then there was another woman there, Jess Harden, you might have come across her. She does some women's rugby journalism. And again, she was the same. She was like, go on, Poppy, because she had thought she'd put Poppy as her captain. Then she realised she put Jess. She was like, oh, no, actually, pass it to Jess. So again,
get the assist.
If everyone's like, imagine a full crowd of people where they've got fantasy league. I mean, I don't know what it's been like in the men's game where you're there watching a fixture and you're in a fantasy league if any banter goes ahead. But just from my experience at the weekend, I reckon that certainly would be happening in the women's game. And it just grows it and makes more excitement around it and makes you learn about players and
definitely.
We've already discussed we're getting Poppy Clearland for this weekend. I'm not leaving that again. No chance.
Well, this is the thing, and you made a good point about how it's great for us to understand and learn about different teams internationally and the different players internationally. But actually, we're Quins fans. We know about the Quins women's team, but we don't know too much further like a field just in the UK. So we know a little bit about Sarries, obviously, because we're sort of toe to toe at the top of the league. But aside from that, we don't know too much. So even in that aspect, just watching England play and learning about a few more players, that was just good fun as well. So I think it's definitely a great tool for that education piece. That was our last sort of deep question. We've got a few quickfire ones now. Mike, how do you want to play this? Do you want to alternate and you kick off?
Yeah, we'll alternate. I'll go for the classic one. And I know it's probably been a long time since your debut in any form of England Quins, whatever. Actually, probably not that long ago with the Quins, 3 or 4 years ago. But what's your debut after the game karaoke song? What's your go-to?
Oh, my first cap England was Wonderwall by.
Oh, okay, yeah, nice, very good.
Same as Johnny Wilkinson.
We've had some good ones across the time. Obviously, Scott Steele was Valerie. Izzy was American Boy.
Jess was Party in the USA.
There's some quite good ones kicking around.
We should make a playlist, shouldn't we?
So the thing with this, though, this used to be like the most daunting thing to do. Like singing post-game after your first cap used to be awful. Now, the kids love it. Like they're like, I'll go again. I scored. I'll go. And you're like, no, you're meant to like be stressed about this. Like you go back in the day and you talk to any player, you're like, what was your memories about that? I was so nervous about my song. No, what was your memories about the game? I was so nervous about the song. Singing out in front of everyone. Whereas now they're literally they love it.
They sat at the front of the bus practicing the dance moves to go along to it.
Yeah. Honestly, it's a change in generation about the stress of the song.
Yeah, a lot of buses come with a microphone as well, which really adds to it, I think.
Yeah.
Next question: who is your idol growing up?
These quick fire, aren't they? All my family, but there was a player, Mickey Skinner. He was somebody that I just used to look up to and want to be like.
Class. Next one, other than the obvious, Birth. Any nicknames? Oh, this should be good. I like that as a reaction already.
It's always a good start to an answer, isn't it?
I started to get the name of BB.
BB.
Okay.
I'll leave it there.
Fair enough. No further questions.
No. So it was either boring Birth or brilliant Birth. Yeah. Well, I can be pretty loose. So then when I'm on the reins, I can be quite So you get one extreme or the other from me.
Yeah. You never know which BB it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that a compliment or not?
Next time we're down at Surrey Sports Park and you're running from South, I go, go on, BB.
Okay. Next question. Fantasy Six Nations wild card, player wise.
Oh, what do you mean by wild card?
Like who's your slipping under the radar, going to slip
dark
in,
horse,
score a few tries?
Oh.
Or like an off the bench superstar, something like that. Someone's going to come on, change the game.
Oh, it's tough, this one.
Yeah. Well, because I'm trying to go through all the nations thinking. I'm going to say Barnett from France. I think she's pretty underrated as a player. She didn't play the game just gone. So I hope she features. But yeah, she is definitely a player to watch out for.
They've got Ireland next, haven't they?
Yeah.
Okay,
cool.
we'll make
a note of that.
Oh, have I done the dirty on you?
Yeah, I know. We are in your league, so I hopefully haven't sold us dummies. And then obviously, like the next one, obviously we're doing a lot of fancy chat here, but who you think's going to wear the armband for your fancy team across the tournament? Who's going to be your big point scorer?
Oh, Breachy.
Yeah.
Poppy Cleo. She's pretty up there. Who else might?
It's extra points if you score in the forwards as well, isn't it? Is it?
No.
Is it not?
Oh, don't be that disrespectful to them.
I thought I read somewhere it was.
Oh, they're forwards.
You've done them dirty there.
Edit that out.
No.
I thought I read somewhere that
It has got to stay in there.
No, edit it out. I thought
they scored most of our tries.
Why would they get extra points?
I don't know. I've read that wrong somewhere. Maybe. Yeah. I'm about to say, because I was going to throw like Amy Cockayne in there. Down in the loose, we saw her score that incredible try down there.
I would have put her in if she wasn't on the bench.
I know, we had her down and I've lost a heartbeat. That little kick and chase.
Try. Yeah, she loves filling in at 10, so that's why she's got those skills.
There's a few hookers out there like that, isn't there? But I don't mind that.
But I guess Skaz. That's been quite a favourite of Skaz.
She's quite expensive though.
Jazz Joyce.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
4 tries out of nothing from Wales. So a few contenders in there, depending on who the opposition is.
Yeah. Nice. We'll have to do a bit more research, won't we?
Yeah. Spot on.
We've got one more question that we ask every single guest we get. What's your favourite Quins memory to date?
Ooh,
and this one doesn't have to be quickfire.
There's been loads, but probably like my first season when we were kind of going through that transition. I was playing alongside a couple of really like old mates of mine. We didn't expect to get to where we got to. Like the first game of the season, I only came in like halfway through the season, but like first game of the season was like a 50-pointer loss, and but that wasn't my most memorable moment.
No.
But then that year, really come together as a side and go to the final and play against the same team we played against where we got severely beaten, and then win the championship and the cup that year was really special. And memories we're trying to recreate.
I hope that's journey. About to say, I am very, very excited to watch not only the rest of Women's Six Nations, but hopefully see the culmination of some hard work in the Allianz Premier 15s, and hopefully get down to the Stoop for a home semi-final, and then we'll move on to the final after that as well. Hopefully, Will and I can get in there and watch and shout BB as you're charging in under the sticks.
This is more like an off-pitch nickname.
Okay. We'll just stick with Burf.
BB.
When the ball's in the hand, we'll just stick with Burf.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Class.
We'll go with that.
Look, Rachel, thank you so much for coming on. It's great to have some insight from something that's at the very, very top of women's rugby. Hopefully everyone that's going to hear it's going to love it, and we really appreciate your time.
No, I loved it. Thanks for having me on, guys. I was thinking about digging you out again because you didn't watch the game, and then you make out that forwards get more points in fantasy league. Like, I don't know. I don't mind. I'll come back and talk to you, Will, but I'm not sure.
We've not covered yourself in glory, mate.
Yeah, I know. We get that a lot. Class. All right, Rachel, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much for coming.
No worries. Take care, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers, Rachel.